to Achieving the Ultimate Life Through Hustle and Prayer. We're here with my dear friend and brother, Aras Baskauskas. Aras is a quiet celebrity in the world. He's a former winner of Survivor, a serial entrepreneur, and a spiritual warrior. Welcome, Aras. How you doing today, brother?
I'm good, Carlos. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start with the Survivor story. I think that's something that is very interesting. Since we only have an hour, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Aras went on Survivor, won, took down the $1 million, and then lost it.
Yeah.
Walk us through that a little bit, brother.
Yeah, I mean, well, like, I guess the first thing I'll say is like, for a long time, I felt like that was an accurate way of describing it. And it's not inaccurate, but I won $1 million and then I invested it. And the payback wasn't immediate. And so it felt like I lost it. But that's not really what happened. And it's not like I invested it in something where I got a return directly from a stock, right? So in maybe like a common kind of understanding, yes, I lost it. But basically, I won $1 million and I invested in myself. I started my first business. And it was a business I wasn't necessarily very passionate about. And oftentimes in life, when we do things we're not that passionate about, life's going to give us a lot of lessons, and I got a lot from that. I cut my teeth with the business, and it's hard. I was 24 years old with $1 million, and so every time I'd hit a dead end with the business, I wasn't really that motivated to find another way. And so oftentimes what I would do is I'd be like, oh yeah, this isn't working, cool. Let me go to Peru and go climb Machu Picchu, or let me go on a road trip because I don't have the financial motivation to go do something. But really quickly, within like 5 years, I was in $50,000 debt. And to go from being a public millionaire to being in $50,000 debt was a hard experience. And what only thing I had to show for it was all this experience. And I crawled my way out of debt. And at this point, I knew how to not run a business, which is actually very valuable. And so when my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, shared with me that, hey, I want to start this business, I said, sure, let's do it. And I will use all of the lessons I learned about how not to do it so that we can try something else and do it well. And thank God it worked. And you know, I went from being in $50,000 debt, and now we have Christy Dawn, which is a beautiful, prosperous business. So, you know,
tell us a little bit about what Christy Dawn is. What's the driving vision for Christy Dawn?
Yeah, so Christy Dawn is a dress company, and my wife has always had a real talent or a penchant for designing dresses. So I knew there was value when Christy wanted to start it. But I think that the thing that separates Christy Dawn outside of her designs is that we do everything with the earth in mind. We do everything with people in mind. The underlying idea behind Christy Dawn is that we can operate a business where everyone benefits. The earth benefits, people benefit, and the people who are making the clothes benefit as well. And so that's really the underlying vision behind Christy Dawn. It's not just to dress women in beautiful dresses, but to dress the whole world in beauty from.
And what makes your dresses so earth connected, so people oriented?
Right.
What's
so
your dress and a Louis V dress, for example, or Chanel?
Right. So most people aren't aware of this. Some people are coming into more awareness about it. But fashion is one of the most polluting industries on the planet. To grow.
Can you talk to the mic, Aras? I'm sorry, it's hard.
Yeah, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, fashion is one of the most polluting industries on the planet. It's the second largest polluter on the planet. Just to make fabric requires so many chemicals. To make it conventionally, you know, when you're wearing a dress or a t-shirt or jeans, the amount of destruction that has happened in order to make that piece of clothing is pretty mind-boggling. And so when we started Christy Dawn, we knew we didn't want to be a part of that problem. And so what we decided to do early on is we said, you know what we'll do? We'll use other people's leftovers. So what brands do is they say, okay, you know, I'm wearing this jacket, right? And it's a Nike jacket. And Nike says, okay, we're going to make 100,000 of those jackets. And each jacket requires 1 yard of fabric. Let's just say that's what it is. Well, they don't order 100,000 yards of fabric. They order 120,000 yards of fabric, just in case there's any issues. Well, invariably, they do that with everything they make. Every season, they have leftover fabric that they're not going to use. And that's called dead stock fabric. And now this fabric typically ends up in small fabric stores. It used to get thrown into landfills. And large fashion houses don't want to mess with other people's dead stock because there's not enough of it and there's no consistency and they can't get any more of it. We said, hey, we'll use that dead stock fabric and we'll make our dresses with dead stock so that we can say with a big open heart, hey, we're not adding to the destruction of the environment with our dresses. We're not adding another footprint on the land. And so that's how we started, by using dead stock fabric, and we were committed to paying people a living wage. Everything we have is made here locally in our factory. I'm sitting in our factory right now. If I turn the computer, I could show you guys the factory is just right down there.
Do that for a second. Let us see the factory for a second. Can you do that?
Okay. So this is Tori and Allison working in it. If you look, let's see, can you guys see down there? There's the factory down there. So yeah. And that's
let me ask you, right. When you guys created Christy Dawn, you had a factory right away overnight. You had this huge factory, but no, right?
No.
So before we get, you started in your home garage.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, the way that the industry works is that there are lots of companies. They're called contractors, cut and sew contractors, where you don't have to have your own factory. They have a factory. You bring them the fabric. You bring them the buttons and the trim and the zippers and the tags, and then they make it for you, which allows people to work out of their garages. And that's how we started. And we met Pedro, and very early on, Pedro is he's currently our the CEO of our factory side. But when we met Pedro, he had his own cut and sew factory, a small one. He had 4 people, and we brought him our dresses, and we said, this is what we want to make. And Pedro was really clear. He was like, I'm more expensive than other people because I pay my people better and the quality is better. And we said, great, that's in alignment with what we believe in too. And for 2.5 years, Pedro worked independently with other brands and us. And then finally we got to a certain size and we said, Pedro, hey, we want to bring you on board. And we asked him what he made. And we said, great, we'll double that and come work just for Christy Dawn. And so at this point, he didn't have 4 sewers. He had 15 sewers. And now there's 35 sewers down there. So we've grown it, and it didn't happen overnight. But, you know, I think that one of the things when I look back, because I am surprised too when I look back at like how things have changed in 6 years, is we always just kept our nose to the grindstone. We always just kept our eyes on the vision of what we wanted to create. And to go from being in our garage to this it's pretty awe-inspiring for me, just to be like, wow, we did this, you know, and I don't know how I would have done it if I just tried to start here. I just started where we were, which was, and I think this is really important. I told Christy, we're going to do this as a hobby. And the reason I told her I wanted to do it as a hobby is because I think the key to business is creating value. And when you have a lot of financial burden, it's very hard to focus on value. Like if we needed Christy Dawn to make us money right from the start, Christy Dawn probably would have never come to pass. But I wanted us to keep it as a hobby because I wanted it to be something where we could put our passion behind it, where we could really just put our love and make it something special. And I told Christy, I was like, when you're designing, I want you to design things that you want to wear. Yeah. And for me, I knew that I only wanted to make things that I believed in. And so we were able to put that passion for what we saw into the company and not worry about whether or not it was going to buy us a house. And by not worrying about whether or not it was going to buy us a house, guess what it did?
So you put the creation of a valuable product before the desire to create profit.
That's right. That's right. It was like, hey, let's create value. And when you create value, people want to come back. When you give somebody something that increases the frequency of their life or increases the value of their life, they're going to look at you. It's like, hey, I want to come back and back. And that's what makes our company valuable, is that our customers don't just buy one dress. They keep coming back. They buy 2 dresses a year from us. And not to get too kind of far onto the business side, but customer acquisition, there's a big spend there. You're spending money to get customers, but if your customers keep coming back, you can do a lot more with a lot less. And the only reason customers come back is because they feel like.
Let's go back a second. I'm sorry to cut you off. Let's go back a second. Let's go back to that moment when you're $50,000 in debt. What kind of business were you running then?
So I had a hat company, a Russian winter hat company. You can imagine those big furry winter hats. And I was in debt. The hat company was actually doing okay. At this point, Survival was about 7 years previous, and I had the motivation to make it work. And so, even though I was in debt, I still had this company. And as chance would have it, I got a phone call from someone saying, "Hey, man, I'm thinking about starting my own winter hat company. Can you give me your advice?" And I sat down with him and gave him all my advice. And I also shared with him, and just so you know, I'm also going to be no longer having a winter hat company because I'm thinking about selling the company. He said, "I'll buy it from you." And I said, "Great." And so we came up with a deal that got me out of debt and got me some change in my pocket.
And that got you out of the debt.
It got me out of the debt and put a little bit of change in my pocket, and I no longer had that hat company.
And then your girlfriend at the time says to you, "I want to create a dress company."
Yep.
And she said, "I wanted to create it that's ethical. I wanted to create something that's different from what's out there today."
I don't know how important the ethic. I mean, it's obviously important for her now, but I think she just wanted to make a dress company. She didn't understand the means of production or anything like that. And I said, "I'd love to help you, but the only way for me to do it." So the hat company for me, everything was made in China. I didn't believe in the product. I didn't believe in how it was made. I had no connection to it. And that was a big lesson that I learned. It was like, hey, if you're going to start a business, you got to believe in it. You have to. Because I don't care what business you start, you're going to hit dead ends. You're going to get a lot of no's. If you don't believe in it, it's really hard to stay in the room with the business. But if you believe in it, you're like, okay, I hear this person said no, but I know there's someone else who will say yes. And so for me, I knew Christy believed in her designs, and I believed in her designs. But I had to ask myself, what do I believe in? And for me, I knew I needed to believe in how it was made. I needed to believe that, hey, we're doing this in a way where everyone wins. I couldn't possibly start a venture that was going to exploit either the planet or people, because that I couldn't continue when I got to dead ends if I was doing that.
So what would you say if somebody said to you, Aras, you're just ridiculously lucky. You got on Survivor, you won, you lost the money or invested it in life, but you didn't get a return on investment in dollar cents. You then started a company, you went into debt. This guy appears out of nowhere, buys the company from you. Your girlfriend comes out of left field to you, says, "Let's start a clothing company." You started as a hobby. Now it's a thriving business with a recognized brand. And someone says, you just got lucky, Aras. What would you say to that?
I'll say I sure did. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's really important for everyone to know is yes, I got lucky. And
what would you say is the source of your luck?
For me, it's my faith. It's my faith in the higher power. It's my trust in the universe. It's I have a deep faith in God, in that I'm taken care of, and I do believe that the responsibility of my livelihood does not rest on my shoulders. It's on God's shoulders, and my responsibility is to play and enjoy. And Now I don't necessarily embody that every moment of every day. I still get stressed out and I still trip out. But I think like if I were to look at the way I live my life, then I do believe that my job is to trust and to play and to be like a child. And when we're like children, we do get lucky. And I think there's enough for everybody. And I think there's enough luck for everybody. But you got to believe in it. And yeah, so that's how I look at it, you know. And listen, having a successful company or not is not necessarily the point of life, right? But hey, rich or poor, it's nice to have money. So I accept the gift, but also, you know, I think that we don't measure our success based on the success of our businesses, because even with the success of a business comes a whole nother set of challenges and things to learn. So to someone who doesn't necessarily see themselves having the same amount of luck, there's still the same amount of fortune there, and the same amount of life and love in there. So, yeah.
So you're equating luck with your personal relationship with God, with the universe.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I would say yes. I would say yes. I mean, and listen, if the universe dealt me a different hand, I think that it might also be a very lucky hand too. It's just how we interpret it, how we take it. Do we accept it? Do we learn from it? You know,
right? Because somebody could have gone through those $1 million and said, "My life is fucked. That was my one chance at making it," and from that point forward, be completely derailed.
Yeah, exactly.
But you had a different perspective.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I mean, there was a moment where I broke down and had a cry on the living room sofa and said, "My life is derailed." And then you pick yourself up, and this is life, right? Like this is the part where we get to continue. We get to learn the lesson. We get to surrender, and so yeah, my perspective was like, all right, well, that didn't work. Let's take what we learned from it not working and apply it to the next thing you do. You know, I hope for me that every venture, every effort I make, whether it be in business or in relationship or in my own recreational time, I hope each of those choices is a choice to the experience of love of God. You know, for me, that's the whole purpose of all of this, right? Is to come into a deeper relationship with God, and sometimes our successes create that experience, but oftentimes it's our failures that allow us to deepen our relationship with God.
Would you say you're a religious man?
No, not at all. And I'm not religious, but I definitely feel like I'm very spiritual.
You said two things before regarding customers that seem to have a spiritual flavor to it. You said increases the frequency of the customer's life. And you also told me something earlier when we weren't recording. You said the customer has to care. So what does that mean to you? The customer has to care. What does it mean to increase the frequency of your customer's life? The frequency of what?
Yeah, so the frequency of a customer's life or my own life, right? In order to increase the frequency of my own life, I get to come into a deeper relationship with myself, with God, with nature. And so as a business offering a product, my hope is that I'm not just selling a dress. My hope is that I'm offering an increase in frequency. Is that through your interaction with my company, through your interaction with our dresses, that your life, your experience with nature deepens, your experience with God deepens, and so that you might experience more joy and more love. And sometimes it's really subtle, right? Like who knows what it is that's going to increase our frequency. You know, for us, like we're doing this project in India where we're growing our own cotton, and we're calling it a farm to closet project. And most people know what farm to table is. But when people make the association of farm to the closet, whoa, even my closet's connected to the earth. Oh my God. And who knows what that moment is for somebody. And that might be it. That might be all we do. And they have this beautiful dress. And now they're like, oh, wait, someone grew my clothes too. The earth grew my clothes. So these are like, that's what I mean by increasing frequency, is like waking people up, myself up, people up more and more to these deeper truths that we're all after, that we're all, trying to remind ourselves of more and more. And then in terms of value, um, in creating value for a customer, I think it's whether people consciously acknowledge it or not, when their frequency increases, they like that, and then they want to come back, and so it's reciprocal, right? Like if I take care of my people, if I take care of my customers, they're going to want to take care of me. And I think this is one of the things that I'm waking up to, is that all of life is based on reciprocal, intimate relationships, right? The more that we can be in reciprocity with the earth, the more the earth gives back to us. Like right now in Australia, it's burning. The Amazon is burning. Like the earth is telling us, hey guys, can we have a more reciprocal relationship? Can we be in relationship with one another? And it's the same thing with people. And so if we can add value to someone, inevitably that value is coming back too.
Talk to me about growing your own cotton. That was interesting how that came about, right? I mean, you were faced with a challenge. Your board made a certain demand of you, and they wanted you to find a solution. And at face value, there was no solution that aligned with the vision and the mission of the company.
Right.
So so for the entrepreneur or the business person that is now facing a challenge or a puzzle, right? That two sides have to be reconciled. How did you go through that process to find the solution?
Yeah, so we had a board meeting, and our investors said to us, hey, listen, it costs you guys a lot of money to make these dresses. And the reason for that is because we make them very well, and we pay our people very well. Our factory is here in LA, right there. And we're trying to compete with people who have dresses who are made for $5 to $10. And they said to us, our investors said to us, can you have these dresses made for $30? And in that moment, the answer was absolutely not. The only way we could have our dresses made for $30 is if we either decreased the quality of the dresses or we paid our people less. And none of those things would work for me, because everyone who lives here in LA, if we paid them any less, they would be receiving below a living wage, and that just doesn't work. And so I sat with it for a while, and I really didn't try to solve that, to be perfectly honest. But at the same time, I sat in deep meditation about what it means to have a dress company, and what we could offer the world besides more dresses. Because the reality is most women who buy our dresses don't have a physical need for another dress. Right? So we're making things for people who don't necessarily need them. They want them, and yes, they definitely add value to their lives, but it's not like people have no dress and are coming to us and say, I need a dress, right? Usually they have 5 or 6 dresses already. And simultaneously, I was asking myself, how can I deepen my own relationship with the earth? And I was learning about all of these regenerative practices. And I'm not sure how much, Carlos, you know about regenerative agriculture, but it's starting to be a movement, regenerative agriculture. And most of it is around food. And I have a friend who started this organization called Kiss the Ground, and they're all about regenerative
What's the organization called?
Kiss the Ground.
Kiss the Ground.
Yeah, super cool organization. And basically what they were sharing is like, hey, through these farming practices, through these agriculture practices, regenerative practices, it's not practices, it's a principle. And the principle is about how to be in reciprocity with the earth. And by following these principles, you can address global warming because you can draw down all the carbon that's in the air. You can address drought because you create these soil sponges. The food has more nutrients and becomes more nutrient rich, nutrient dense, because the soil is now supported. So by taking care of the soil, by taking care of Mother Earth, we can address many, if not all, of these global issues that humans have created. Wow, amazing, right? And then it struck me. And it did happen with me because of I was in the medicine. And the medicine showed me, hey, you need to be farming. And it struck me, oh my goodness.
And when you say the medicine, you're talking about about ayahuasca, about plant medicine.
Yeah. He has consistently shown me visions of me and my family on the farm. So I knew all about this regenerative agriculture for food. And then it dawned on me, oh my goodness, we grow our clothing too. We grow the fibers. What if we started a regenerative cotton project? And so I reached out to an organization that was all about responsible sourcing of cotton. And they said, yeah, we have this woman who's finishing her internship with us. She can come work for you. I said, great. She comes and works for me. She makes one phone call to this woman named Rebecca from Fibershed and says, hey, I'm calling from Christy Dawn. We want to start a regenerative farming project. On the same exact day, a man named Nishat in Erode, India calls Rebecca and says, hey, I want to start a regenerative farm. I'm looking for a brand to partner with. I mean, the synergistic timing of that, another lucky situation. And so we connect and we finance this farm and we become partners with, his company is called Oshadi. And we are now growing cotton regeneratively in India on 4 acres. And not only are we growing the cotton, but we're also going to have the cotton vegetable dyed, block printed, woven, all there. And since we're doing all that there, we said, well, why don't we set up a factory there as well, where we can pay people significantly more than the living wage there and have an entire fiber shed created in this area with the help of Oshadi. And guess what? Even though it's going to cost more per yard for fabric, when it all comes down in the wash, guess how much it's going to cost us to have these dresses made? Our investor asked for 30, and we're getting it done for 25. But it didn't start with how can we save money. This whole thing started with how can we be in deeper relationship with the earth and with ourselves. And
so once again, you followed one of your core principles of value. You found a way to have value. In this case, value for life, value for the earth. You said to yourself, how can I marry more value into the source of my dresses, which is Mother Earth, and my business? And through that process, the universe itself created this synchronicity that opened the doors that created the financial remuneration. But it all started with a core principle of value for the earth, and that brought the solution to the business.
That's right. Exactly. It was like, how can I get more intimate with the earth? How can I be more deeply connected? And without even asking for anything in return. You don't even have to ask. You just pour your love in, and it comes back. This is the law of the universe. I didn't make this law up. This is just, it is what it is.
Brother, let me ask you a few business questions. So obviously, Christy Dawn is a 7-figure business. There's no hiding that, and it's something to be proud of, since it's being done in an ethical way that creates value for the customer, for the earth, for the associates. Not a big fan of the word employees, the associates of the business, because everybody makes it happen from the ground up and from the top down.
Yep.
But you're sitting here as CEO of the company, and I know you. I know that this is your office wear. This is pretty much what you come into work every day wearing. Okay, so what do you say to that person that has that image of what an entrepreneur or CEO is? I mean, it's one thing to be a kitchen commando CEO and run your business from a laptop at home. But now you have employees, you have an office, you have investors, you have a board of directors, you have overseas operations. But here you are, bro, in sweatshirt and a t-shirt. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, Listen, I will say it's a heck of a learning curve going from having a business in your garage to having this many employees. And I think the business has asked me to show up differently. Certainly, but not. It hasn't asked me to dress any differently. It's asked me to be more responsible. It's asked me to be more present, and certainly, it's asked me to get more. The bigger the business grows, the more employees you have, the more opportunity is there for lack of communication. And I've certainly had some hard lessons about that recently with employees and making sure I'm clear in my communication. But it's all a learning. This whole game is a learning, and I certainly haven't mastered it. That's for sure. Just ask Tori. No, I'm just saying how many things I'm learning as the CEO, how many mistakes I make. Tori's kind of my right hand. Without Tori, I don't know how we would run this thing. But there's been times where Tori's had to sit me aside and say, "Hey, Aras, you are not doing a good job, and here's why, and we need to address this." She says she's always thought I was doing a good job, but that I've made some mistakes along the way, and this is the reality of being a CEO, is that we do make mistakes, and that we have to be open to what the rest of the team has to say. And as you said,
on one side, we're seeing that you're frugal. You obviously don't invest a lot of ego or money into your outward image of what you're wearing. It seems to me that you're investing more of your energy into who you are as a leader inside, internally. So, but now my associate, my employee comes to me and wants to tell me something. How do you distinguish between, putting your ego aside and listening to them and really receiving what they're saying versus someone that's just coming to talk without really knowing what they're talking about? And maybe, because that happens sometimes, right? Sometimes associates take their role for your role, and sometimes there's a story that's speaking truth, and you have to
I think you have to listen to all of it, right? Like, no matter what it is, whether it's just somebody working out their karma with you, which is not your job, you still have to hear it. And then you have to take the sieve. You have to take the pasta strainer, and you filter out the parts that have nothing to do with you. And this is deep work that we all have to do. That when somebody says don't take something personally, I'm realizing just in the last few months that I still don't know how to do that. So somebody comes with you and they say, hey, like, here's all this daddy issue stuff I have, or whatever the karmic issue I have. That's not for me to deal with. But if I have a response to it, if I have an emotional response, I still have to deal with that. Not with this person. I have to go and take my time. But then there's times where there is real feedback, and the posture trainer will keep that for you. And it'll be like, hey, you're here, or come here. And in these moments, and I've had more of them than I would like to admit, of like, hey, oh, wow, I have to soften. I have to open and admit, like, I don't have all the answers. And you know what? That's okay. It's okay. And I'm going to make mistakes. Like, I wasn't born the CEO of a 65-person company. This is just, here I am, and I'm learning. And unfortunately, there's no course on how to be the CEO of a 65-person company except to go be the CEO of a 65-person company. And you're going to learn. You're going to see.
And that'll get you ready for 70, 80, 90, and exponential growth. God bless you.
That's right. I have a mentor. Carlos, I want to share this story with you. I have a mentor.
That's a big one. Get into that.
And he started 3 really successful companies. The first company was called Day Runner. This is before iPhones and all that.
Before you talk about the mentor himself, let's talk a little bit about the value of finding a mentor.
Oh, my goodness, man. Well, since this is the first time I've had a 65-person company that I've got the reins of, it certainly behooves me to find someone who's done it before. and learn from them and to take their guidance. In the same way, where spiritually we have mentors and teachers, in business we need them also. And oftentimes they overlap. And there are no manuals, there are no handbooks on this stuff. And so a mentor oftentimes can help guide us and support us when we're going through a really hard thing, which happens, you know. And thank goodness there's people who have walked this road before me.
So tell us about your mentor and that relationship.
So he's a friend of a girl I went to elementary school with. He started 3 successful companies. One was the Day Runner. I don't know if you remember those. Before phones, it was like a calendar with every date, and you'd write things in it. This is like 30 years ago. Seems obvious, but no one had done it before him. He came up with the Sensa pen, which is those pens with the squishy thing where you holding on to it. And then he came up with, so he's an inventor as well. He came up with this plastic dishwasher safe wine cup called Govino. So he's had a lot of success. He's also had a lot of failure. And what he said this to me before we had kids. And it rings so much truer now that I have children. But he said a business is like a baby. If you stay in the room with the business, if you stay in the room with the baby, you're gonna figure it out. Because when a baby is newborn, it only needs a few things. It's either gassy, it needs to be burped. It's hungry, it needs to be fed. It's tired, it needs to sleep. It's cold, it needs something warm. Or it's got a dirty diaper, right? So you run through the list. And within 10 minutes, the crying baby's not crying anymore most of the time. When that baby's 5 years old, if you haven't been in the room with the baby for those 5 years, you're probably not going to know what the 5-year-old wants. You're not going to know how to talk to a 5-year-old. But you stayed in that room that whole time through it, from the time where you just had those first 5 things, and now there's 50 things or 500 things that this 5-year-old could possibly want. You're ready. You're ready for the 5-year-old because you stayed in the room. And the same with this business, which is a 6-year-old. I stayed in the room with this business. You know, and certainly there's times where I want out of the room. And when a 5-year-old, when a baby turns into a 5-year-old, it doesn't have an overnight option. But by the time you can be out of the room sometimes. You don't have to be in the room all the time with the 5-year-old. And learning that balance of like when to be in, and this is where a mentor is great. But that advice has stuck with me really solidly about staying in the room, especially when things get hard. Stay in the room. You'll figure it out. Just be there with it.
Brother, let me ask you, when you first started succeeding, you're in my opinion, you're a good-looking guy. You're definitely an alpha guy, fun-loving, adventurous. When you first started having success, how did you avoid or overcome the temptation to buy the Rolly, to buy the Benzito, to get the Louis V gear? How did you sidestep or avoid or overcome that pitfall that so many young entrepreneurs fall into, where we begin to wear our money instead of invest our money?
Well, thank God for me, I grew up in a neighborhood with people who had much more money than me. And I could see very quickly that money didn't make anybody any happier. In fact, some of the most miserable people I knew were the wealthiest people. And they would buy all those things. Can you hear me?
Yeah, could you repeat that part? It got low.
Oh, so some of the richest people I know are the most miserable people I know. And so I knew that money doesn't equate to happiness. And so I think, fortunately for me, I've never been a watch person. I've never been a clothes horse. I've never been none of that has ever. Thankfully, this karmic trip for me has not been about my attachment to things. I have other attachments that I get to work through, but fortunately, just truly lucky, this is not mine to work out. So I didn't have to really, there wasn't a lot to fight against with that. And I think a lot of it is just growing up with so many wealthy people who are so miserable. I was like, well, that's not going to make me happy. I'm not even going to go down that road.
I think it's important to make the distinction that even though you grew up around wealthy people, your actual household would not have been considered rich by any means. You guys were up in a working class house.
working class family, and I would just happen to be on a scholarship to a private school, and so I got to see a lot of really wealthy families, and a lot of the what's the word toxicity that happens when you have ancestral wealth. It's crazy.
All right, but now let's get into something that not every entrepreneur has to face, but it's massively important for those that do: the entrepreneurial household. So here you have a partnership with the lady whose name hangs at the front of the business, Christy Dawn, a fabulous human being, a brilliant woman. You have a parenting partnership with her. You have the household partnership with her, right?
Yep.
You have the we're married, romantic, bound for life partnership with her.
Yep.
And then you have the business partnership with her. But if we really get down to it, what really happens is we find that a lot of times there's a lot of difficulty and challenge when you run the business with the person that you sleep with. So what are some of the what are there stories that you could share with us, lessons about balance, about making it happen and making it succeed when you have a business with your lover?
I think the first thing that we did, and I'm so glad we did it, we called it the separation of church and state. It was very, when we started, it was okay, Christy's responsible for the creative design and creative feel of the company, and Aras is responsible for the business side of things. And we made that distinction. We tried to make it a big, clear gap, divide. The reality is those things overlap, of course. But over the course of these 6 years, it's taken a lot of trusting that the other one knows what they're doing, being patient when the other one makes a mistake, because mistakes happen, and really by creating this like very clear delineation of roles, it allowed us to honor and respect those roles. In terms of all the other parts of being lovers and being parents and being householders, it definitely accelerates. You know what it is? It's kind of like yahe for a relationship, right? Like you drink yahe and you're accelerating all of this feeling. You're going to go through a lot really fast. Well, when you're in relationship with somebody and you're in business with them and your parents, you're accelerating all of the karmic lessons between the two of you. And it's just a commitment. It's like, all right, we're going to do it. We're going to learn. We're gonna take this, and we're gonna make a lot of mistakes, but we're in, and we're committed to being in. And let's find little places along the road where we can pause and just be lovers. And let's find places along the road where we can pause and just be individuals and have our own space. And these are things that we're kind of constantly working on. It's a constant work, work in progress of like finding our balance of where we get space for ourselves. I don't want to jinx it, so I'm going to knock on wood, but 6 years in, and I couldn't ask for a better partnership.
Let me ask you, Aras, what happens? So it's a vice versa question. We have a blow up at home, and now we got to go to work, or we had a blow up at work, and now we got to go home.
Oh man, it's the worst. It is the worst. I feel the most kind of empathy for the people we work with, right? Because if Christy and I are in conflict, everybody knows it, and it's like, oh, who do I go to, right? Like, I'm the CEO.
Mom and dad are fighting. What do we do?
No, it's I feel bad for everybody. So we try our best not to have those things happen. We're learning how to communicate so that those things don't happen. And when conflict does happen, how can we take some time? Can we talk? Can we be open? Can we be vulnerable? But yeah, I mean, it happens, and everyone in the office, it's like, oh, they feel it more than anybody, right? So it's like, well, then what do I do? Who do I go to? yeah, I feel for our
So
team
do
sometimes.
you have a tip, a trick, a technique that you would share with an entrepreneurial family? 'Cause I think the bigger one for me, yeah, if we have a problem in the morning and then we go to work, um, that's not. It's horrible because you you say, hey, honey, what's the Wi-Fi password? I don't know. Like you're not gonna get any questions answered, but you kind of get around it because you got your own things to do, and kind of the day goes by. And so that one is secondary to me. The big one for me is you had the problem at work, and now you have to go home. Have
Yeah,
you figured any tips or tricks or anything that you can share with the entrepreneurial family that would help?
man. I mean, I think the one thing that I really feel like has been helpful for me is to surrender, to really surrender. Like when I'm worked up about
But does
something,
surrender mean, honey, you're right, even though she's not, and just let it go? Or what does surrender mean?
I'll give you an example, and I'll change the names to respect everything that happened. But we had a situation at work where there seemed to be an obvious move for me. We needed to make this move, but it was very obvious as well that for my wife that she needed to have an emotional response first. And that didn't work for me. That scared me. It was like, we're not gonna do this from emotions, are we? No way, no way, right? And for me, I was probably less in touch with my emotional response and just wanting to find the solution, which isn't necessarily better in the grand scheme of things, because I still needed to process, but I wasn't going to process. I was just going to deal with the problem without the emotions, which is good. She needed to go through her emotions. And what I realized is like, okay, if I give my wife 3 days to process these emotions, we can take 3 days and then we can deal with the issue. But what she's really needing right now is she's needing an emotional response, not to the issue, but she's needing to go through it. And if I can hold space and surrender and let her have this, it doesn't mean that I'm going to surrender that we won't find the best solution at the end, if that makes sense. So we went through it. She took her 3 days. I waited for her. I let her be upset. I let her be sad. I let her be all the things she needed to be. And then when she was done being that, then we could then address the issue. But old me would have been like, no, we need to address it right now this way. And she didn't, that wasn't going to happen. She needed to go through her emotional process, which I think kind of a younger me would have been like, no, 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 no. There's no room for emotion here. And so how do we make space for both? And I don't know if this is just the way that our relationship is, but typically when there are issues, my mind goes to separate the emotion out. How do we find what's best for the company? What's the best solution? And for Christy, she's very much like, no, I'm going to feel through this first, and then I'll come up with a solution. So it's a little bit of a compromise where I get to be patient, which I get to learn that, and also like making it okay for my wife to go through her emotional process. Hopefully, I'm making it okay for me also in the future to go through my emotional processes. It's all related, right? It's like if this business had nothing to do with my spiritual evolution, then it wouldn't be the business for me. And just that act of like making space for her to have her emotional response, in the end, makes space for me, hopefully later on. And the more that we can have that space for all of those things and still find the right answer and heal our emotions and then find it, man, what a beautiful thing.
Something that keeps coming up for me when I hear you speak is that there is no separation between my spirit and my business. My spiritual path. It sounds to me that when you speak, my spirit, like if I were you speaking, to paraphrase you, it's my spiritual path is my home, is my relationship, is me, is my business, is my everything. Business can be very cutthroat. Business, as we know, can be, as Nipsey Hussle said, is a cold game. What do you do to keep the fires of your soul burning bright and in love with passion, connected to the fundamental principles, the core that drives you. So, in other words, when you're doing business, when you're having to make business decisions, when you're negotiating, when you have to look at the bottom line and decide whether do we expand, do we let people go, when you're facing the perspective of competitors, what do you do to make sure that your soul and your heart are the ones driving the decisions and not the mind, not the ego, not the business warrior that Western society has indoctrinated us men to becoming?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with my meditation practice, certainly, right? That's a morning and an evening thing I do every single day. And then, you know, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to sit with Vipassana, but Goenka, who teaches Vipassana meditation, he shares this thing, and he says, continuity of practice is the secret of success. And for the longest time, for years, I thought he meant that means you meditate every day. That's what continuity means. And that's not what he means. At least that's how I interpret it now. What he means is you're always meditating, right? It's all, the whole thing is a meditation. It's all a lesson. It's all a learning. And as often as you can you be aware? And so, yeah, business can be really cool. At times, you have to make hard decisions. Like, we recently had to let go of an employee who was very well liked in this office. Unfortunately, what the business needed and what she was able to offer didn't match. And so we had to let her go. And the way that I was able to navigate that is to, one, recognize that the business is not here to save people, right? That's not the job of the business. And that the business has a bigger mission than one person keeping their job. And it's my job is to make sure that the business stays healthy. That's what my job is at this point. And at times, like anything in nature, things have to get clipped back. You want a tree to give you a lot of fruit, you know what you should do the year before? Trim it down a lot, right? And then that next season, you're going to get all this fruit. And it's not personal. In fact, oftentimes when we keep people in positions that we know aren't right for them, we're not just holding the company back, we're holding them back, right? And so, like, to take off that mantle of like, I'm not the savior. I'm not here to, it's not my job to save anybody. I'm not to, like, the universe is taking care of all of us. But the universe, as it's acting through this business, is asking me to clip back here. And I have to listen. And the way that I listen is through, you know, obviously looking at the data, but also getting clear. And that's in my meditation. And then when things come up, it sucks to fire someone. It is the worst feeling. But then I got to sit with it. Okay, what is it? And for me, and this is something, Carlos, I admire in you. Me and Liz were talking about this the other day, is that you don't care what people think about you. What an incredible place to get to. And that's where I'm working on, right? How do I get to the point where I don't care what people think about me, but I care about people? And you know, when you're firing somebody, I promise you, there's no one sitting across the way when you're firing them thinking, "Wow, you're awesome. You're so." I don't care what you say; they're not saying that. And so, again, like that.
You're so awesome for letting me go. Thank you.
You're so generous. But again, all of it's a learning, you know. So yes, I think my meditation practice is big, and I try to make my meditation a consistent experience. Talking to you now, can I be present to what's going on in my body, the feelings, you know?
I just want to say something. You're right. I find it to be very empowering, not to care what people think, but it's more empowering to not care about what people think and care about people. Because it's easy not to give a fuck and just not give a fuck.
Yeah.
But I have found it to be a true path of learning and growth to not give a fuck about what they think, but to give a fuck about them.
Yeah.
You know, and there is a balance there, and it doesn't happen overnight, you know, because it's true, you know, sometimes I do hurt inside, but I don't hurt inside because of what they think about me. I hurt inside because I know what that reflects about what's going on inside of them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that is such a painful place to be because I've been there. I know what that little hellhole feels like. But yeah, brother, absolutely. Caring only about, in terms of perspective, of thought, I like to focus on the results. What results am I bringing to people's lives? And if I'm in the 90 to 98 percentile of I'm bringing positive results, I'm bringing positive growth, then the other 2 to 5%, I give myself permission to still be a student of life, to still be learning, because I'm far from being a master. And so I totally agree with you, brother. We have to get to a place where we don't care about the judgment of others, which also liberates me from judging others, by the way. When you don't care about what others judge you as, you don't care to judge anymore. And wow, you have so much more time and energy to do things, but
Yeah.
also getting to a place where I do care about myself, and I do care about you, and I do care about Liz and everyone else. That to me is clutch in this life personally, as far as my personal evolution goes. Brother, you said something, and I'm going to ask you maybe 3 more questions, and I'll let you go because God knows that you're busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Consistency, routine. This seems to be a big buzz now going on about routine and how routine leads to success. Uh, Talk to me about your routine for success. And in there, please throw in, how do you balance that routine with time for the kids, time for your family, time for yourself?
Yeah. So my routine starts and ends morning and night with a meditation. That's that. That's kind of the pillar of my personal routine. I come into the office Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Today is a Thursday and I'm here, but I'm committed to being in the office Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday, I'm either here or I'm off site. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm with the family, which is a beautiful work week. And I've discovered that through Tori's help and feedback of like, hey, the team needs to know consistently when you're going to be here. And so by giving the team that structure, it allows them to show up differently, allows me to show up differently. The reality is like when you're the CEO of a company, is that my job is like it's kind of, there's 2 basic things I do. One is I put out fires, right? And then 2 is that I get to sit with and I get to vision. I get to hold the vision for the company. Where do we get to go? And oftentimes, sitting at a desk is not where vision is necessarily the most available. And so that's why Thursdays and Fridays, or certainly on Fridays, but Thursdays I try not to be at the office. Go for a hike, go do a qigong class, go do something where I can connect more deeply into the places where I find.
That's Aras time. That's you time.
Yeah, but you know what the thing is as we said, like, because it's not separate, it's like if there's no Aras time, then the company will suffer, right? Because it's every great thing that I've done for this company has happened from inspiration. Inspiration feels so fucking good, It feels really, really good. You know it when you find it. And to get there, you have to start to let yourself feel good. And to let yourself feel good, you first got to start by oftentimes letting yourself feel where you are, which oftentimes isn't that good, right? And then we work through that. And so, like the qigong classes, the Aras time, that's it's for everyone. It's for the family. If I come home and feeling good, inspired, the family's going to benefit. The company's going to benefit. So there's this hierarchy for me, and the hierarchy goes like this: most important is my relationship with God, my relationship with the universe, whatever words you want to insert there. Number 2 is my relationship with Christy. Number 3 is my relationship with my children. And number 4 is my relationship with my business. In that order. If I don't take care of those things in that order, things start to get really wonky. If I put business first and God fourth, things start to get really wonky. If I put the kids before I put my wife, things start to get really wonky. So that's my totem of importance. And by following that, everything seems to flow. And when I get out of when something's wrong, oftentimes I can say like, wait, have I actually been putting God first? Have I put, and oftentimes I look back and say, oh no, I didn't make that commitment.
So when something's off kilter, you go back to the fundamentals and you see, where have I been lacking in my fundamentals?
That's right.
Brother, as we're turning the corner here and about to wrap this up, my takeaway from this gorgeous conversation has been, first, the I'm going to call them the Aras pillars of success. All right. First is faith in my creator, faith in the universe, faith in yourself. Then comes passion. When I do something that I'm passionate about, it gives me the power and the energy to be persistent and persevere in the face of challenges and troubling times. Because when you have your own business, it's not always going to be roses and sunshine. Whether you're making $1 a day or $1 million a week, there are going to be moments of trial and tribulation. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, it's not going to be enough to give you the strength and energy to be persistent and overcome. Keeping your nose to the grindstone, working hard at what you are passionate about, not getting lost in fairy tale concepts, not thinking about becoming wealthy, but rather working towards that wealth in a manner that invests the profits into yourself and into your people, rather than into material goods that do not bring you happiness. You have to care about people and the earth first, and before you worry about making money, worry about creating things of value.
That's right.
How's that?
I love that.
That's the Aras pillars of success, brother.
I love that.
That's the fundamentals of your book right there, bro.
That's awesome.
But before we go, speaking of books, is there a book or a course or a series of books or courses? I know what you're going to say. The first thing out of your mind is you're going to recommend people to get How to Create Ultimate Fulfillment with Carlos Duran, and I appreciate that. But other than that, is there a book or a course that you would recommend?
Oh gosh, man, there's so many good books. I will give a book recommendation, but I'll give it on conditionality. This book works for me. There's books that won't work. This book won't work for everybody. But I would say like read lots of books and pick the things, take the things that work for you and leave the rest behind. I really enjoy the Four Agreements, which I think is a really simple book, and something that I can always come back to and ask myself, hey, like, how am I doing? Am I taking this personally? Am I doing my best? Am I making assumptions? It's a good book. If you've never read it, pick it up. It's a book you can come back to consistently.
Now, let me ask you, because what we're doing here is geared towards men. Not to say that, of course, it's a benefit to everybody. It's for everybody. It's for anybody that wants to participate, to listen to it, to use it. As you just said, take what serves you, leave behind what doesn't. But speaking to the brother, what would you say to a fellow brother when it comes to creating the ultimate life through hustle and prayer? What does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, it's attainable. It's not out of attainment. It's yours if you want it. And it requires faith, and it requires a deep commitment. And it's attainable. It requires faith. It requires commitment. And look for a mentor. Like Carlos, you offer this course. I've taken the course. It's wonderful. It requires commitment. It requires faith. And you got to believe that it's yours, and it will be.
My brother, thank you so much. Aras, thank you for being here with us today. If you want to get a dress, a beautiful gift for your mom, your sister, your girlfriend, your wife, your fiance, check out ChristyDawn.com. We're going to have the link there for you as well. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in yourself. Thank you for bringing the uniqueness and the brilliance that you are into this world. My prayer, and I know that Aras's prayer for you, is that that brilliance shine at its maximum potential and that you be able to achieve the highest purpose of your life, living in glory, in love, and in passion every instant, every moment. In the words of Taita Juanito, may your daily walk be your greatest prayer. Thank you so much for being here with us. We love you. God bless you, and God has protect you always.